The egg theory was born via a short story written in 2009 by the U.S. novelist Andy Weir. Weir is also known for The Martian, which was in 2015 adapted into a Hollywood movie starring Matt Damon. But perhaps the egg is what will truly enshrine him in the annals of theoretical science and philosophy. Weir himself has expressed some surprise at the enthusiasm shown for his egg idea, which he says took him less than an hour to jot down before posting to an online forum. But really, in a modern world where a meaning for life perhaps feels more and more difficult to understand, maybe it's not so surprising that the egg should catch on. So what actually happens in the story? Weir's main character is known simply as You, and quickly you meet God, who's referred to as Me. What follows is essentially a conversation between you and God then, through which the true nature of reality is revealed. At the beginning, the bad news is that you've just died in a car crash. God explains this to you, but also explains that you'll soon be reincarnated as somebody different, as a young Chinese girl alive almost 1,500 years ago. God further reveals that this isn't your first reincarnation either. Far from it. You've actually been brought back countless times before, into countless different bodies, living in all earthly locations at all times in the past, present, and future. You then muse over the fact that this means you were once the likes of Abraham Lincoln, Adolf Hitler, and even Jesus Christ. While God reminds you that you've also been everyone else too, including Lincoln's assassin, Hitler's victims, and Jesus's followers. God continues, explaining further that, in fact, the universe was made for you, as a kind of structure through which you could live every human life possible. The realization is that now, and actually always, you are, or have been, so much more than just the person who died in the car crash at the apparent beginning. Rather, you are everyone. Everyone that's been, and everyone that will be. Essentially, the universe is for you. Finally, God explains what the thinking behind all of this is. The idea is that through being everyone, you would learn that everything you do to yourself. Every time you hurt someone, you hurt yourself. Every time you help someone, you help yourself. Every time you've been kind or mean, happy or sad, selfish or selfless, you're actually being all of those things as everyone. Every human experience that ever was or will be is your experience. And when you've lived every human life possible, today and in history and in the future, then, so the story says, you will become a god just like the one you're currently talking to. Only then will you have infinite wisdom of what it really means to live. And so the story ends. For the reader, there's perhaps a clear moral message here, as it's implied that you should always try to think, act, and be your best side. Not just because it's in your best interest, but because it simply is you. Everything is you. So would you rather everything was good or bad? However, perversely, the story also relies on the realization that all bad people are essentially your responsibility too. This is a wide-open thought experiment then, with endless conclusions that could be reached. Meanwhile, the entire thing doubles up as a journey toward your ultimate enlightenment and your ascension to God status. This is how Weir pitches the universe as an egg, because it's where you grow and develop until you reach that stage. There are some schools of philosophical and scientific thought that this story could fall into, or at least that it blurs boundaries with. Eternalism is a philosophy of time wherein the flow of time doesn't really exist. Instead of the universe, your life and everything else moving through time, with the past behind it, the present always here, and the future to come. Eternalism says that all of those states of time are real together. Time is more a box to open up and look into, rather than a one-way road down which to travel. In Weir's story, this is one of the first major revelations for you, the main character. When you reincarnate in China 1,500 years ago, it's not exactly as if you'll have traveled back in time. It's more like you'll have opened the book of time at a different page. Next, there's the theory of open individualism, another key concept in The Egg. Broadly, this is the idea that you are everyone, or that everyone is you. There have been many variations to it coined over recent decades, but again, it usually relies on the dismantling of the flow or passage of time. Time, as it's commonly understood, doesn't really exist for the open individual, or how else could it be that you could be anyone else at all? Instead, and by some understanding of it, it might be said that you, yourself, exists like a sheen over the world, applying itself to all, or that every apparent individual person is in fact linked simply by their shared experience of being here. It might feel as though all of us are different, but actually we're not at all. At the most fundamental layer, we're the same, literally the same. Theories of open individualism don't usually lead to the final point of Weir's story, however, when it's explained to you by God that once you've lived as everyone, you too will become a god. Here, the egg takes a more theological turn, with similar concepts appearing across most major religions, but especially in Hinduism. While most religions have some form of God the Creator, an all-seeing, all-powerful entity, in Hinduism there's the Brahman. This is a kind of topmost metaphysical layer that rests over everything else, including Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the trinity of supreme Hindu gods. The Brahman is unsurpassable. It's the ultimate truth of all things. It never changes, can never be changed, and represents the ultimate reality in Hindu thought. One reading of Weir's story could perhaps cast the god figure within it as something close to the Brahman, although the implication is that even it exists somewhere else. So Weir doesn't quite tie up reality in exactly the same way. But what's your verdict? Do you subscribe to the egg theory? Would you like to, but can't quite bring yourself to accept it? Of course, it's not as though this is something that could ever provide proof of itself. It's an idea proposed by Weir, and a blending of various other approaches to life as well. Similarly, there are perhaps some signs of us building in some aspects of the egg with regard to our future lives as we currently appreciate them. The hive mind, for example, is an often cited advanced technology that human society could be moving towards. A unifying something that enables us all to think, understand, and perhaps even feel the same things. Usually it's pitched as though it's a path towards ultimate efficiency, but could it also lead to a greater wisdom and effectively fast-track us, you, me, toward the egg's endpoint, toward living every human life possible? Or would a hive mind actually take us further away from that total truth? When it comes to future technology like that, it's easy to steer ourselves into an early dystopia. But really, and while interpretations obviously differ, that's probably not the main takeaway from the egg theory. Instead, it's an idea more about the boundless possibilities for life, and it's a repitching of the universe, with you at the heart of it. But not you, not exactly.